Alright, Swifters, even though I'm Prof G, my haircut resembles Mr. Clean, and we're going to be using that squeaky coating incentive to further polish up our user interface in Snacktacular. We'll learn even more tricks and tips for customizing the UI based on the context of the app and what the user should and should not be able to do. Now, along the way, we'll learn how to hide and show toolbars programmatically. We'll learn how to make sure that the back button shows up when we want it to, and we'll start off with a few quick challenges. Let's code! Well, Swifter, you don't want to forget important skills you learned in earlier apps, so in this first challenge, we're going to implement code so that when the keyboard is showing, if you touch an area outside of the text field or a text view, the keyboard will go away. Hint, you've actually got this code in one of your view controllers already. Just make sure it's in both the Spot Detail view controller and the Review Table view controller. Also, disable the Save button if there is an empty string in either the spot name or the review title. Hint, we covered this back in WordGuard. Now, you've already got an empty IB action and review table view controller that you can use for this. That's the function called review title changed. But in the spot detail view controller, you're going to need an IB outlet for the save bar button. Add one for the cancel bar button while you're at it. We're going to need that later in this lesson. And you'll need an IB action attached to the name text field to handle disabling the save button if the name string is an empty field. Make sure you add the right action for this action too. And why don't you call that action name text field changed? Special bonus, disabling save for an empty string in the name or view title is good, but savvy user testing will reveal that a malicious or unaware user could simply type in spaces and make it look like a review has no title or spot has no name. Can you also disable the save button if it's full of blanks? Why don't you pause, give it your best shot, and let's look at some solutions. So first, let's begin by hiding the keyboard when you clicked out of a text field or text view. Now, we've actually already written this code. It's in Spot Detail View Controller. It's in View Did Load. So I'm going to highlight from the comment down to the end when we add the Tap Gesture Recognizer. I'm going to copy it, head over to Review Detail View Controller, and paste it into View Did Load right underneath the super statement. Now, to enable or to disable the Save button, depending on if we have a review title or not, I'll use the jump bar to head down to the IB action that we created for this in an earlier video. Now, remember, not only can you scroll through the jump bar, but you can also type in the name of the function that you're looking for. That's Review Title Changed. Here it is. I'll click it. Now, remember, when we created this IB action, we control dragged from the Review Title field, and the action was set to Editing Changed. Now, the non-bonus challenge solution to disable save if there's an empty string in the text field of the review title field is if review title field.text does not equal empty string, open and close curlies, we'll add save bar button dot is enabled equals true, else open and close curlies, save bar button is enabled equals false. Now for that bonus challenge, with a bit of user testing, you might have discovered that it's possible to type blank spaces into the text field, and that'd give you an unwanted result. It would be a review that looks like it doesn't have a review title, even though there are blank spaces in there. Now, we learned how to deal with this in an earlier video by using the trimming characters method and trimming out white spaces and new lines, so we'll do that now. We'll first create a constant that strips out the white spaces, so we'll call that let no spaces equals, and we strip those out from review title field dot text exclamation point, and then remember the method to do this? It's dot trimming characters, and look at what code completion says. It says it returns a string made by removing from both ends the string characters contained in a given character set, so press return to accept this. Which character set do we want? Well, we can type in dot white, and remember we have two different options in here, white spaces and new lines. There shouldn't be new lines in there, but I'm going to accept white spaces and new lines anyway. Then I'm just going to highlight and copy the no spaces constant we created, and I'm going to paste that over the left-hand side of this not equal statement. So now let's do the same in Spot Detail View Controller. We'll prevent the name field from being blank too, so click on Spot Detail View Controller. We need to add an IB action to detect editing changes in our name text field, so I'm going to make a space for that function just above my first IB action in this file, that's Save button pressed. Then I'll option click on main storyboard to enter the assistant mode. I'll scroll to find the name text field, that's the one with the restaurant name in it, and I'll control drag this to the left, let go of my rubber band. Whoops, it looks like I'm adding this above my save cancel alert function instead of in the space that I just made for this. That's not a problem, so I'll just leave that action here. You can move it later if you'd like. This is an action. The type should be UI text field. The name should be name field changed. Set the event to editing changed and press connect. Now close main storyboard, head back up to the name field changed function we just added. Let's make a little space so we can add our code. And this code is going to be nearly identical to the code that we just wrote in Review Table View Controller for the review title changed. So I'm going to head back to Review Table View Controller. I'm going to highlight the contents inside of the curlies of Review Title Changed. Copy that. I'm going to return to Spot Detail View Controller. Paste this into the name field, change curlies, but I'll change Review Title field to Name Text field. Now we get a little Xcode grumping in here. It's saying, hey, there's no such thing in this class as Save Bar Button. So we need to option click on Main Storyboard and make sure that we've set up an IB outlet for the Save button on this view controller as well. I'll scroll my Swift file to the top so that I can add my IB outlets with these others. Make sure you find the right Save button, and that's the one in the Spot Detail View Controller. Then just Control Drag over, release the rubber band underneath your existing IB outlets. Name this Save Bar Button, click Connect. While we're here, let's also Control Drag from Cancel Button and create an IB outlet named Cancel Bar Button. Click Connect for that too. Now we're also going to need to programmatically change the title of our Save Bar Button item. And we can't change the title of a bar button item unless its system item is listed as custom. So with the Save Bar Button item clicked, let's head up to the Attributes Inspector and we see, oh, the Save item is currently set to Save. So let's click in Save Item, change that to Custom, then change the title to Save, close up the main storyboard, hide the Attributes Inspector, and let's take a look at the rest of what we want to do with the UI in this video. And here's the code we'll write in View.Did.Load of our Spot Detail View Controller. If this is a new spot, spot equals nil, then the default setting should be fine and shouldn't require any additional code. The default setting for the name text field and the address text field should both be for these text fields to already have borders and gray backgrounds. If your background for the name text field and the address text field is not already set to UI element background, why don't you go ahead and do that right now. Bar button items save and save cancel should show. We're arriving via present modally segue, so we don't have any back button, so no further changes should be needed in the case where we're creating a new spot. Now, if this is not a new spot, then the spot was saved and loaded and passed in. So we shouldn't be able to edit this spot. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this helper function that we'll write down below. And in this function, we'll set the name and address fields to is_enabled equals false so that they can't be changed. We'll remove the background color, so no more UI background color gray that was set by default, and we'll set the border style to .none. And we need to do this instead of using the no border method that we wrote in our extension, because we need to get rid of the iOS border that was set in the main storyboard, and this is the only way to do that. Then back in this else condition in the View.Did.Load, we'll hide the cancel and the save bar button items, and since we won't be allowing the user to change the location of a saved spot, we also want to hide the toolbar at the bottom of the view controller, that one that has the lookup button in it. Now this code here gets rid of the toolbar at the bottom of the view controller. We call navigation controller and then the set toolbar hidden method on the nav controller and pass in true. But one important thing, once we write this code, we get rid of all of the toolbars at the bottom of the view controllers that are embedded in the same navigation controller stack. That means all of these ones here, and that's not really what we want, because if the user returns to the spot list view controller, they should be seeing the toolbar at the bottom, because that contains the segmented control that allows them to sort and reorder the spots in the table view. And so to add back the toolbar in spot list view controller, we'll make this call in view will appear, calling the same line navigation controller set toolbar hidden, but this time passing in false. Finally, if we want to make sure that the back button with the left pointing arrow shows up when we're showing a saved spot, and that's what we want, since you're not going to save or cancel a spot that's already been saved, then make sure that the navigation item, now that's this area here, in the spot detail view controller, is set with the left item supplement attribute selected. Again, not a friendly name for this attribute, but it'll be necessary to make sure that that back button shows up when we show segue in, when we're showing a spot that's been saved. So let's code. In spot detail view controller.swift, in our View.Did.Load, we've already got the if spot equals nil. Let's add an else clause. So we'll say else, open and close curlies. Then after update from user interface, let's add this function func disable text editing. Open and close parens, open and close curlies. Then we write all the code to disable the name and address fields and remove their background color and borders. So we'll say name text field dot is enabled equals false, address text field dot is enabled equals false, name text field dot background color equals dot clear, address text field dot background color equals dot clear, name text field dot border style equals dot none, and address text field dot border style equals dot none. Then let's groove back up to our View.Did.Load into those curly braces we just wrote, and we'll call disable text editing. Then after that, we'll make sure that we hide our cancel button and our save bar button. So we'll say cancel bar button.hide and save bar button.hide, taking advantage of the extension we wrote in the previous video. And again, we're here because we already have a saved spot. So we're going to hide the toolbar because we don't want the user to be able to find a new location and change that location. So we'll say navigation controller dot set toolbar hidden. This is the method we want to call. Highlight that, select it. For the hidden parameter, we'll put in true, and for animated, we'll put in true as well. Now remember, when we execute this statement here, this is going to turn off the toolbars at the bottom of all of the view controllers in the view controller stack. That's all that are inside of the initial navigation controller. That's our initial view controller for this app. So we need to show the toolbar when we return to the spot list view controller, since that's where our sort segmented control is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this line that we just wrote, copy it, then I'll head back to spot list view controller, and then I'm going to find our view will appear function, and I'm going to paste it right after the call to super, but I'll change this first true parameter to false. So then it is false when we arrive here that we're supposed to set the toolbar to hidden. It won't be hidden, so it will be shown. Then up next, back to the spot detail view controller, we need to edit when we save a new spot before segueing to add a new review. We need to update our user interface there, since we went from the condition where the spot could be edited to one where we just saved it, so the spot shouldn't be editable anymore. So the code that saves a spot before we head to the review table view controller after clicking on the review button is the function save cancel alert. Now I could find and jump to it in the scroll bar by scrolling through this, but remember, you can also type into an open jump bar, and that narrows down the selection options available. So I can see if I start to type in SAV that I have save cancel alert, I'll just select that and jump right to that point in my code. Now, when you work through user interface changes in your own projects, you might just write out the user interface on paper or mock it up on some slides. There are even some third-party tools for this. A really popular one is called Sketch. You can try it for free. There are educational discounts. There are lots of tutorials for this online. And the reason you mock up your UI is so that you have a clear sense of what you need to create, either on the storyboard or in your code. And if you find yourself changing your UI as you work on projects, that's very common, although it is best to have scoped out a strong idea of how the app will fully function before you start development. Now, in industry, you're likely to work with a designer or a design team who will advise you as to what to have on the different screens in the different app conditions or usage states. And I'm sure that there are folks watching this video right now who would like to explore different ways of implementing the UI. Hopefully you'll feel empowered and you'll have the skills to make these changes after we go through some of these initial techniques. But here's what I've got for you right now. Now, this is a diagram showing what we need to do when we're saving a new spot before adding a review. And this is the code that we'll need to write to make this vision happen. So when we start off adding a new spot, this is what the UI looks like. We've got our name and our address enabled. We've got our save and cancel showing. We've got the toolbar showing. Now, when we click on the rating button, we're prompted to change because this is a new spot. We do, but before we head to the review table view controller, where you can add your new review, we need to set up the user interface that we're going to return to, since this is what exists under the review table view controller. And we're going to return to this and see this when we pop back from that review table view controller to this spot detail view controller. So we'll set the save button to done. No more saving after the initial spot has been saved. Again, this is a design choice. You might allow this, but if a user can change a venue after it's been reviewed, that would corrupt your results and it wouldn't make sense. Now, we can't show a back button with the arrow since we didn't show segue when we set up to add a new spot. So instead, I've decided to just change the save button to done. Now, in UI language, done is not cancel. Cancel implies that actions are not saved. Done just says, I'm done using the current screen. There's no implication that anything will be lost or not be saved. But we're also going to hide our cancel bar button. We're going to hide the toolbar. There's going to be no resetting the spot's location after it's been saved. And we'll disable all of the text editing for the name and address fields. Then we can perform our segue. So let's code this up. All of these changes are inside of the completion handler for spot.saveData. We'll start off with self.saveBarButton.title equals done. Then we'll hide the cancel button with self.cancelBarButton.hide, thanks to the extension we wrote in the previous video. Then we'll call self.navigationcontroller?set_toolbar_hidden, and we'll pass in true as the first parameter and true for the animated parameter. Then we disable the name and address fields by calling self.disableTextEditing. And that's it. Once we've done this, our UI is set up exactly as it should be when we return to this spot detail view controller from the review table view controller. Now there's one more thing we need to do. We mentioned this on an earlier slide. We need to add the left item supplement to our spot detail view controller navigation item. Now this will make sure that we can see the back button in the spot detail view controller when we need it to show up. So to do this, head to the main storyboard, find the spot detail view controller, that's the one with the map on it, Click on the navigation item, that's the rectangle in the navigation controller area at the top of this view controller. You'll notice that the attributes inspector now says navigation item, then find and select this checkbox for left item supplement. Even though we don't see it here, the back button will show up when we need it when we build and run. Then let's return to the spot detail view controller and build and run. No errors, hammer time! Here's our app. Let's click plus to add a new record. I'm going to click on the name text field and we see the keyboard shows up. If yours doesn't, remember the Shift Command K trick in the simulator. And with the keyboard showing, if I click the map, the keyboard goes away. So that code's working fine. Click the address, keyboard appears. Click outside the text view, keyboard goes away. That's just what we want. Now let's go down here and look up a spot. I'm going to look up a spot for a place called Eastern Standard. That's a restaurant in Kenmore Square, but maybe you've seen their Instagram ads. They're selling soft pretzels over the web. I'll click on rating. The venue has not been saved. I'm going to click save. Now I'm going to pause the video before and after so that you can see the changes before we do our perform segue. So I'm paused. This is before. Now I'll unpause and pause again. Look, just as the segue is creeping up there, the title of save is changed to done. The cancel button is gone, and the name and the address field have been changed so that they cannot be edited and they are not gray or framed. Now pay attention, because this is what we're going to see when we return after we've saved our review. I'll add my review. 4 stars, Instagram pretzels. This is the place that advertises all over the gram to ship you soft pretzels. Snarky Jojo might say they call it Insta. I call it the gram. Just back off. I'm a dad. You gotta expect these things. Now I'm gonna click outside of the text view in this white space just above it. The keyboard goes away. Nice, just what I want. Click on the review title. Keyboard shows up. Click on a star. Keyboard goes away. Keyboard up. Keyboard goes away. Let's click save. And we see our review is in the table view cell, but more importantly, based on what we've done in this lesson, the name and the address field can no longer be edited, they're no longer framed, they're no longer enabled, they no longer have a gray background, the cancel button is gone, our save button now has the title done, you can click around swifter, but your interface has been so polished up it's like you applied some sort of Swifty ShamWow. I'm impressed. Keep at it.